You're listening to The Secrets of Sacred Art, where we unearth the hidden treasures, history, and deeper meanings of religious and sacred art. We're your hosts, Kathryn Laffrey
and Alix Murray. Welcome to episode 4, The Story of Joseph, a tale torn asunder. In this episode, we're going to introduce you to a fascinating pair of paintings and their unfortunate fate. It is a story of caution and one that needs to be told regarding sacred and mundane art and the role of galleries and museums today. It's also a tale of wonderful maps that transcend time and space. It allows you to travel through the life of some interesting characters if you know how to read it. So, Kathryn, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
And this one is, I'm excited about this one.
Oh, yeah.
So this is something that I discovered when I was asked to do a talk on the life of Joseph a couple of months ago. And it was so fascinating. I thought, I really want to dive a little bit more into this image. So if you could show us the two panels. So this is, we're going to see it one at a time. So if everyone is looking at this panel, this is the story of Joseph, and it was painted by Biagio D'Antonio around 1482, and it was a wedding present for a family in Tuscany, and they were originally installed as wainscoting in a bedroom. I did find that out. We had this discussion like, well, where was it? Now we know where it was. It was in a bedroom. The first panel that we're looking at in the story of Joseph is actually owned by the J. Paul Getty Museum in Los Angeles, California. And the second panel, and can you switch to, let's see if we can look at the second one. It's a fantastic panel. You know, both of them are just incredible. This one is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So it is literally this panel, these two panels, which were meant to be together, are actually torn asunder. And one is on one side of the United States and the other is on the other side of the United States. And as a result, neither one of them are on display. And I think the problem with something like this is the sort of thing that kills me when we're talking about art, whether it's sacred art, whether it's mundane art. And when mundane, I guess we should say this in case we haven't said it before, mundane art is art that is not sacred. It's not about religion. It's not about, a religious event or something that is supposed to be used in terms of worship and in part of the liturgy. So this would be just, maybe portraits of people, landscapes, that sort of thing. The problem when you divide these things up, and this happens all the time, and it is a sad reality of museums and galleries, and it's been going on for a really long time. It's kind of like if you're supposed to be looking at this and you're supposed to be reading it and understanding it, what's happened with this panel, it would be like someone ripping Lord of the Rings in half and giving some people the first part and other people the second part and going, isn't this amazing? Well, yes, it is amazing because it's an amazing story, but you're missing so much of how you can understand the story. And art is not something that is just supposed to be viewed in kind of a passive way. It is something to experience in the same way that you experience a book or you experience a film. Could you imagine watching just the last 15 minutes of every Star Wars film? It would just, especially the first, well, I guess episodes 4, 5, and 6, because they kind of are similar and you'd be like, what is this about? This is dumb, like it wouldn't make any sense and you wouldn't even want to look into more of it. And that's what's happened with this image. And I think it's something that should be, and I will say this, there are a lot of museums that are starting to rethink how they display things, how they purchase things, and how they, how they acquire and preserve things. So thankfully it is changing, but this is something, it's really, really unfortunate because this is a fantastic piece of art. And I want to say, I'm going to use the singular because it is one piece of art, a complete piece of art, and yet it's been torn asunder. And so I think we've had a little surprise that I think we should show it at the end. We'll show it complete at the end so people can enjoy it the way it was meant to be viewed and take all of that in. But I kind of wanted to get a little bit of your feedback, Kathryn, in terms of what's happened to this piece of art. And
yeah, I mean, the saddest thing is to know that it has literally been torn in half. Not only has it been torn in half, it's been taken out of context. So this would have been a good point. In someone's home. It's in the bedroom. Okay, it was a wedding present. That makes sense. But then you think about contemplating that image in home. That's a teaching moment. You have all these opportunities to share. What are you seeing in that image? Looking at them. Seeing murals in like the great French wallpaper murals, different entryways or in dining rooms or sitting rooms. It helps you to just kind of sit, slow down, and contemplate. Yeah. So now having these pieces torn apart, they're no longer functioning in the way they were created. And then it's sad to know that they're not even on display. Yeah, because I would love to see these back in a home setting. Maybe exactly. In Tuscany, maybe. Please.
Maybe in a little villa in Tuscany. Yeah, that would be quite nice. But no, I think you're right. And again, we see this all the time when we go to museums and we see sacred art taken out of context. And it just kills me, to see that. And then you think, oh my gosh, how powerful must this have been when it was in the proper context. So this is something that is, like I said, an ongoing debate. Certainly it's worth discussing, and I'm glad people are, I'm glad it's being discussed. Whatever is going to happen with these two panels, who knows? But yeah, you're right. It would be absolutely phenomenal to see it in its proper place because that, of course, when the artist created this, and actually we'll talk a little bit more about artists who created this, they created it with the setting in mind. And so all of that matters when you're looking at art. The context, the environment, lighting, what's happening in that room, all of that. And that is not only for sacred art. I mean, it is especially for sacred art, but it's also for mundane art. Yeah. And I think, when people think about the artwork that they're putting in their home, what does it mean? What's it communicating? And how are you going to live with this thing? How are you going to have a conversation with it? I mean, that's the thing. That's why art is so amazing. Anyway, so I digress just a very little tiny bit. Anyway, so these panels were made, as I said, by D'Antonio in around, did I say 1482. Thank you. Yeah. 1482. And as you look at it, the way workshops and apprentices worked in Italy at that time, you would have a school. And so D'Antonio, I think there's a lot of evidence that he had some help on this, and he had a lot of influence from different artists, and we'll see all of that. And that was meant to be seen and understood, and it was even more so in it to the people who were looking at it in a contemporary sense, meaning back then, the people who were contemporary to D'Antonio looking at it, they would have picked up on all of this stuff much more than we have. So, that's why we want to try to tease out all this information that he was putting into this amazing painting. Yeah. And it is the life of Joseph of the Old Testament. And so now our listeners and viewers are going to have to bear with me, as will you, Kathryn. I'm going to tell you the summary of the life of Joseph. And he lived for a long, long time, and lots of stuff happened to him. So I'm just going to be as concise.
I think what I'll do is I'll put the images up as you switch from one part of his life to the other, just so people kind of get an idea.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah, exactly.
First half of his life into the second half of his life, and I'll flip pictures as you tell the story. Okay,
that sounds good. And that'll be, I think, a little more entertaining than just listening to me drone on about this man's life. Anyway, so Joseph is the favorite son of Jacob, who makes no secret of his feelings by putting Joseph in a position of leadership over his much older brothers who shepherd their father's flocks. Joseph doesn't help the situation, as he obnoxiously tells his brothers about dreams he has, where he rules over them. When Jacob orders Joseph to deliver a message to his brothers, they are fed up with their little brother, and they decide to kill him by throwing him into a dry well. One of the brothers, Reuben, convinces the other brothers to sell Joseph to some merchants rather than to murder him. This they do, and Joseph is taken to Egypt. The brothers then soak Joseph's fancy coat in goat's blood and show it to Jacob, telling him his favorite child has been eaten by wild animals. Jacob, of course, is distraught and mourns the death of his son bitterly. Meanwhile, Joseph is sold to an official of Pharaoh's house called Potiphar. When Potiphar is at work one day, his wife tries to seduce Jacob. When he rejects her advances, she falsely accuses Joseph of assault, and he is thrown into prison. While in prison, Joseph successfully, or unfortunately, depending on who you were, interprets the dreams of the royal baker and the butler. When the butler is freed from the prison, Joseph begs him not to forget Joseph, who has been unjustly imprisoned. The butler duly forgets about Joseph, who must wait in prison for a few more years. When Pharaoh has a number of disturbing dreams about the future welfare of his state, the butler finally remembers Joseph and recommends him to Pharaoh as an interpreter of dreams. Joseph successfully interprets Pharaoh's dreams and is promoted to second in command, where he manages the state in order to avoid a 7-year famine. Meanwhile, Jacob and his family are at risk of starvation, so he sends his sons to Egypt to purchase wheat. The brothers go before Joseph, whom they do not recognize, asking to purchase grain. Joseph recognizes his brothers, but he doesn't reveal his true identity to them. Joseph then plays a series of odd tricks on his brothers before he finally reveals to them that he is the brother they sold into slavery years before. Pharaoh is so excited about the reunion of Joseph and his brothers, he invites the entire family to move to Egypt. He gives Jacob and his family the land of Goshen, where they prosper. After Jacob dies, the brothers are afraid Joseph will finally take his revenge on them for their heinous act. They beg Joseph for mercy. Joseph weeps and assures his brothers that God was in control of everything from the beginning and was even able to use their terrible treatment of him to enable him to save his family. Joseph requests that he be buried in the land of his fathers upon his death. Sadly, no one fulfills this request, and he is buried in Egypt. This ends the story of Joseph. Okay.
Good recap. Yeah.
Thank you.
A lot going on there in that kid's life.
I know. And he, like I said, he lived for a really long time. And so let's get into the panel itself and see how D'Antonio interprets the life of Joseph. And he kind of makes this a feast for the eyes. It is just, you can look at this thing, and I think we both have. We've just looked at this for hours and could look at it for more hours. We really could.
I have been lost in this cute little story for days, I'm sure.
Cute little story. Oh my gosh. Cute. Oh yes. What is it? Fratricide.
I don't know. It's just crazy story, but somehow it comes off as cute.
I know. See, this is the difference between Kathryn and me. Maybe people hopefully will start picking up on it. Like Kathryn says cute, I say fratricide. It's just that's why we work. That's why we work so well together. But so in this first little section of the panel, and again, this is something that we're going to see over and over again. It's a little bit like Where's Waldo? So you're always going to be able to know where Joseph is. There's certain things that you go, okay, that's Joseph. Just the way Waldo has on his hat and his glasses and his red and white striped shirt, Joseph is always going to be wearing that blue tunic with the gold trim. And sometimes just to help you out, you can see his name down there, Giuseppe.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
a good old tradition of putting names on iconographic images.
Yeah.
It's so much easier.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? In some ways it does if you can read. But if you can't, but if you couldn't read, there were other things to help you enjoy and understand the story in just as much depth as somebody who was reading a text. So it's nice that you have the imagery and text have equal weight, I think, in things like this. And this is not the only example of this. You will see this over and over again in our works of art. And also you will see these kinds of panels over and over again. So if you go to a church, if you go to a cathedral, if you go to a museum and you see these panels, you will be able to figure out who the characters are, because a lot of times they're going to look the same. They're going to be in the same dress no matter where they are. So in this panel, we see Jacob, who is venerable and old, he's sending Joseph off to deliver a message to his brothers. And you can see little Benjamin in the scene as well. And he's kind of, Jacob has his arms around Benjamin. So these are his two favorite sons. And they were the sons of his wife, Rachel, correct? And she was not
sons of his old age, they say.
That's right. And they were also, they were not his firstborn sons, but they were his favorite. And so I could just really talk a lot about Jacob, but he was always not into doing things in conventional ways. Let's just put it that way. And, and a lot of people had problems with that. And I confess sometimes so do I, but anyway, these were truly his favorite sons. And Jacob is wearing this really rich tunic with sleeves that go all the way down to the ends of his hands. And that is an indication that he was put in a leadership position, favored over his brothers, even though he was a young child. Kind of, that really probably bothered his brothers quite a bit. But
especially since it says he's 17, so he's 17-year-old boys. They think they know everything, and put him in a leadership position over older brothers.
Yeah, good luck with that one, right?
Yeah.
So, is there anything that you want to add to this? Something that you've seen, something that that stands out to you in this image?
I mean, first of all, Benjamin being under Jacob's cloak.
Mm-hmm.
Just a fascinating way of showing how precious little Benjamin is, the youngest is, to his father Jacob.
Yeah.
And then seeing Joseph, he is a shepherd, so he does have a staff, but that staff is also kind of representative of his authority that his dad has given him. And so I just find it interesting because both the brothers, Benjamin and Joseph, look much younger than they are, but I think that's just kind of a way of showing them as being the younger brothers.
Yeah. And
Sometimes
precious.
A 17-year-old can look like they're 30. So.
Yeah. But also that they're precious to him.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's also kind of that, visually there's that triangle thing going on that the human eye loves. And it really gets your eye moving around this little section. They're nicely framed within almost like I would almost say it looks like a tabernacle type shape around the three figures. But because they're in, you've got the height of Jacob's head and then little Benjamin, and then you move over to Jacob and he's just slightly higher, it keeps your eye moving around in that and really concentrating on just those three figures. So well done, D'Antonio, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the second image, we have Jacob, and he's going to tell his brothers he's going to deliver the message for his father. And I think for some reason, the way D'Antonio has executed this particular image, Joseph, he looks isolated. He looks vulnerable. He looks innocent. Because we know his fate, like we know what's going to happen to him, but he doesn't know. Yeah. And of course we can see in this panel everything that's happening in his life all at one time. And that's another really important thing about this. We can see everything at once, just the way God sees everything at once in our lives. And I think that's the other genius about these panels. It gives us a God's eye view. So there's a theological element to this. But going back to this part, he really does look innocent. And you kind of want to tell him, turn back. Don't go yet. Or maybe,
the whole moment is so calm and peaceful with the little dog lapping at the stream and the stump. And I had so much fun zooming in on this image. First of all, the museum did a great job with this image, getting a great high resolution picture out there for people to enjoy if you can't travel to the museum.
Yeah. Well, you couldn't see it anyway if you could go to the museum. So thank you for making it high res. Anyway.
So I absolutely loved zooming in on the tree stump that's there. It has a little opening in it, and there's actually mushrooms and little plants growing inside the stump. So it has this kind of closed in, safe little feel, like you said, the innocence. He's protected. But that's all about to end real soon.
It is. So, okay, so let's see. So the next one, if we're going to look, here he is telling his brothers. He's delivering his message, and I kind of imagine in this scene, he's like telling them about his dream. And what he had a dream where there were, oh my gosh, was it 7? I'm getting it all confused. Like the wheat bowed down to him. Mm-hmm. And, he dreamt that he was one bale of wheat. And then his brothers were other bales of wheat, and they all bowed down to him, which is, it's like, really, Joseph? And that's not obnoxious at all. And I just think he's probably telling them, and they're like, oh my gosh, here he goes again. And, but it is a lovely scene, the detail. And this is this is a lot of detail in here. And this is kind of an arch, it's in the archway. It's right above, when Jacob is telling him to deliver this message. And it's almost like, I want to say almost like a thought bubble above, Jacob's head, or a speech bubble, like you'd get in a comic. And, but there's also foreshadowing. So in this, so there's just so much in that one little space, so much information. And I kind of wanted to hear your impression about the brothers. But then before we hear that, I just have to say, I love the cows and the dog. I mean, they're just amazing. They're just amazing.
I mean, the animals in this really help to set the scene. And at certain points of time, the animals are actually pointing you to what you should be looking at.
Yeah,
so
that's
just
true.
Like in this, you have the 2 sheep that are laying down between Joseph and his brothers. And those sheep are looking directly at Joseph. So Joseph is giving the message now.
Yeah.
The brothers are all, some looking at him, some are starting to converse. So there's some plotting and planning going on here. They're not making eye contact. Some have actually turned from him. So then you're really wondering what's going on.
Yeah,
It just gives you that little sense of, okay, what's happening? What's coming next? There's some turmoil amongst the brothers, the way that they're all turning in different directions from him.
Yeah, and you know what? I just noticed this. The one lamb, let's call it a lamb, not a sheep, that is near Joseph's feet. That is an unblemished lamb because he's got his tail. I think a lot of people don't realize that when lambs are born, they have quite long tails and they are docked like the day after they're born, they living in rural England, we do see these sorts of things in the springtime. Best time of the year to live in England is lambing season, but the lambs are born with quite long tails. And when the lambs were prepared to go to slaughter at the temple, they had to be unblemished, and so that meant that they had to have their tail. And so I just noticed that you have that juxtaposition of the unblemished lamb next to Joseph. So there you go.
I had never known that before.
There you
I
go.
just thought there were different breeds of sheep, some with long tails, some with short.
Well, there could be, and but the ones I've seen around here, they just have really long tails until they don't. Okay, so.
The aftermath of all of this conversation.
Exactly. Next panel, please.
Next panel.
Yes. So this one is, there's a lot going on here, and it's quite violent. Poor Joseph. He's almost like, he reminds me of an image of Christ being scourged. His tunic is ripped off of him, and look at his arms. His arms are like, almost like they're on a cross that you can't see.
Yeah, the outstretched arms.
Yes, yeah. And then he's been plunged into this well, and you can see Reuben. Reuben is the one who told his brothers, like, do you know what? Let's calm down. Let's do something else. This is a bad idea. And he's away from everyone, and he's almost
literally trying to sit it out.
Literally trying to sit it out. And also his staff is almost like he's almost separated himself even with that staff from his brothers. Like, I don't want to have any part of this. And, there's just so much, there's a lot of action going on here. It's quite turbulent. And you really feel for Joseph, and fortunately, along comes some merchants coming down the hill with their camels and their packs. And again, the animals are just all over the place. And they do even lead you, they lead the eye down into this image of this well. And you can see where they even, D'Antonio very helpfully is named everybody. We have Reuben and Giuseppe, and then we have merchants. And so the merchants, the brothers, in fact, if you look, it looks like one of the merchants is giving one of Joseph's brothers some money. And
there's definitely the exchange there.
The exchange. And, so it's, it's a transaction now. And I mean, and that's terrible and wrong, but it's better than murder. So, yeah. So, let's hear what you have to say about it. I get all excited about it. Yeah. No, slow down. Got to go back.
I'll go back.
Okay. Yeah. So what kind of stands out to you in this one?
What's fascinating about this is if you look off into the corner of our image, I show always where our larger images are coming from the larger panel. And all of this chaos is directly above that quiet, peaceful scene we had of Joseph walking to greet his brothers. So he went from solitude to total chaos of him being thrown in a dry well, not a good thing to be thrown into, and then, being sold off. It's just that combination, the juxtaposition of the peace and the calm with the chaos really makes us stand out. And it makes me want to keep diving into looking at what's every face doing, what's every animal carrying, just to see all the different positions people are in, see how well they're cooperating with this crime.
Exactly. And, and the other thing, if you look at the whole panel, the way it's all set up, it's not set up in kind of like a timeline kind of layout, like a, what are the things, the storyboards. It's not like a storyboard. Right. It's something else. It keeps you moving back and forth. And there is a lot of chaos. There is a lot of disorder in a lot of this, the disordered affections that Jacob has, he puts the younger above the older sons, and that is what has caused this resentment. That is what has caused all of this. And so even just visually going back and forth, that kind of speaks to the chaos maybe that was happening in that family.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Yes.
Deception. Ooh.
Yeah. This is really, we have to hear about. This is really interesting. So this is when Joseph's brothers show Jacob his tunic that they have soaked in goat's blood and told their dad that a wild animal has eaten his son, which is really horrible to say. And it's a lie. It's a horrible lie. That's actually worse than we sold him to Egypt. Do you know what I mean? Like if they just come home and said that would not have been as terrible as he was eaten by a wild animal. That's right. Just a nightmare. And I think this is really powerful. The thing that I find really powerful about this particular section and this little image is the coat. The way D'Antonio has painted this coat, it looks like a human face, like crying out, almost like trying to say, this is not true. But of course it's silent. They don't hear it. Or Jacob doesn't understand. He doesn't know that his sons have told this horrific lie. You have little Benjamin trying to comfort his father. And I think it's interesting how none of the brothers are looking at Jacob at all. And they're kind of conversing amongst themselves. But I kind of wanted to get your impression or your thoughts, Kathryn, about the colors. We talked about the colors in our previous episode, which was really fascinating. So I just want to hear, what do you think is going on with the colors? Do you think that has a significance there, or what are your thoughts?
There's probably a yes and no. Good old Kathryn. Yeah. There, too,
there you go.
You have, those reds for passion, and there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
You have poor Jacob just lamenting the loss of his son. Seeing him all wrapped in the red like that and curled down, you can just see that his cloak almost feels heavier looking at it compared to his two sons that are opposite of him dressed in red as they stand in their pride.
Yeah.
And then of course you have, that's gotta be Judas. I said, yes.
Judah
in the middle.
Yeah.
His yellow, trying to look all regal, like.
Yeah.
I'm the big brother here who can put all this straight and figure it all out for everyone.
Yeah.
But just that whole contrast, and just a lot of the color just feels like it's a good balancing effect to try to show, the full range of what's happening here. And I also find it interesting that Jacob had once tricked his brother and father. And now he's being tricked by his sons.
Yeah. And
so there's kind of a little playback to
the sins you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also found it interesting, the use of the room, because in the previous panels, I'm going to go back a few on this one, because I want to show the difference between, let's see. So here's the room with Jacob, and he's sitting in his throne. We're actually seeing him in the same room, but from a different vantage point now.
Yes, yeah.
Which I found absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Oh, so cool. Yeah.
So we're turned 90 degrees to the scene from before. So it's like everything's slanted now. The relationships are all off kilter.
Askew. Yeah, they're all askew. Yeah. Interesting. Boy, this guy was good at what he did, wasn't he?
Oh my gosh, yes. The layers are just, we're going to get lost for hours.
I know. We don't want this to be a two-parter, but we could make it a two-parter. Yeah, but we're not going to. Fear not. We are not going to do that. Okay. So now this is something that I'm glad you pointed this out when we were kind of going over it, because again, I think what's so nice about looking at these kinds of panels where there's so much action going on and you can follow the story, this really fascinating story and all the different angles and perspectives of it. Sometimes you miss things because you're just taking in everything else. And I missed this. This image, it's teeny tiny, it's up at the top of the, you could almost like forget about it because there's not a lot of action going on per se, but it's actually
like filler off to the corner.
It does seem, it's like a filler episode.
Yes, exactly. It is the filler episode.
Exactly. But it's really, really important. And I missed it. So this is an image of the merchants taking Jacob to Egypt. And of course, Joseph, you've got, sorry, oh my gosh. Joseph.
It's easy to do.
I know. So in this image, he's at the, I guess at the port or the harbor, and they're going to go off to Egypt. And this kind of brings us to the next panel, which is genius. You know what I mean?
It does flow one to the other, literally through the water. It flows.
Exactly. But
so I have to say one thing before we go on.
Yeah.
I'm looking at these ships, and the whole time I'm wondering, whose house was this in? Because why would you do so much with a merchant and all of this movement that I'm almost wondering, because this was at the time of the great voyages that were happening around the world. This is not far from the time of Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, 10 years later. Yeah, 10 years later.
So that really made me think about this. Was this possibly in the home of someone who either sponsored, supported, or participated? Or
could have been a merchant themselves. Yeah. A merchant family. I mean, certainly there was, a lot of money in Italy at that time being made by the merchant class, and the rise of merchant families. I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, or forgive me if I'm wrong. The De Medicis, I think, started off in commerce and merchant, as merchants, and they gained a tremendous amount of power. This is right on the cusp of all of that happening. So good point.
The start of the Italian Renaissance.
Yeah, right on the edge.
So here we go, ready to sail across the sea.
Yeah, here we go, all the way to Egypt. And here we are in Egypt. We've been transported to Egypt. And this one is, let me see, this one, it's a little harder to make out, but this is where he's, on the right-hand side, there's like a cluster of people, I guess, disembarking from the ships. Mm-hmm. And you've got Joseph, who looks quite small. Interestingly, he is wearing his tunic, and Potiphar and the merchants. So this is when Potiphar is purchasing Jacob. And, I don't think, and this is the thing, his brothers did not send Jacob his tunic in Egypt, to Egypt, saying, here you go, we cleaned it up.
Yeah.
He's in the same tunic for the viewer's sake. This is so the viewer knows, oh, there's Jacob, or there's Joseph. And because sometimes, again, you might have people who are not capable of reading, or not capable of reading Italian, who are looking at this. So,
this makes me think about all those great cartoons growing up, going, did these kids never change their clothes on?
Yeah.
They're always wearing the same outfit.
I know. Do I was thinking about Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Gang. Yeah. Yeah. Like they always had the same clothes on, but yeah, that's how you would know that's who it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay,
good point.
So sells him off, and where does he go next?
There you go. I know. And this is really an interesting and quite, it communicates a lot of sophisticated ideas, I think, in one little image. And this is what I love about these kinds of images. I think this is something, this style of painting, I think actually would work really well today because of graphic novels and comic books and things like that. People are used to seeing and kind of making sense of images with a little bit of dialogue or no dialogue at all. And I just wonder, if there are any artists out there, graphic artists or comic book illustrators, really start thinking about what can you do in terms of telling these sacred stories in this form, because it's been done in the past. I think it would absolutely be successful and people would really get it today, and they would get it on lots of different levels. So, okay. So back to this little image. So on the left, you can see poor Joseph and Potiphar's wife, and she's grabbing his tunic and he's like he's got his shoulder hunched and he's pulling away from her. And she just looks mean and nasty to me. I don't like her.
I'd have to say this is the one time the red really makes sense as a representative of her lust.
Yeah. Like she's covered with her.
This boy.
Yeah, he's covered with her lust, and she's just looking at him and she's grasping him like some kind of monster or something.
She's the original cougar.
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
That housewife saw a 17-year-old and should not be talking to him.
Exactly. So poor Joseph. And of course, then she falsely accuses him of doing what she wanted to do. And then he's in prison. And you can see that on the right-hand side. But interestingly, in the middle, we have, and it's like this fast forward into this other part of his story, like we're talking years into his future. In the middle, we have Joseph sitting in the seat of power with all of his brothers around him, bowing down like he said they were going to do. And he's reunited with Benjamin, who is a bit older. And you can even see, we didn't really go into the tricks he played on his brothers. I always thought they were a little weird. I'm sure that they have lots of meaning that go way over my head. But there's a sack of grain with a golden cup inside that Joseph hid. And, so this is way into his future.
Yeah, this is almost a spoiler.
It is a little bit of a spoiler. And then you have to think, well, why would he do this? Why would D'Antonio even do this? Or maybe the school that produced this image, because if you look at them, and we can go into a little bit the difference between these two panels and why there's a strong indication that they weren't painted by the same person, but within the same training. But why would they do this? And I would say it's because these two tragic events that have happened in Joseph's life were pivotal in making the greatest thing happen in his life. So at the time when these two injustices happened to him, he could not have foreseen where he would be and his ability to save his family and ultimately save his whole people, his entire people. He couldn't know those two things, but it was, if those two things had not happened, those two tragedies had not happened in his life, this third triumph never would have happened. And I think that is the genius of this image. It's just amazing to do that. And it's like all with images.
It's God's point of view on Joseph's life.
Exactly.
God sees the glory that's going to come from the tragedies and obstacles that we have to live through. And he will bring about those glories. And that's what's fascinating about Joseph's story is the whole time you're reading through it, you'll hear God was with him. God was with him. So just like calming the sea, he will be with you through whatever storm is in your life and bring you on to the glory that he intends.
Exactly. And in the end, it will all make sense. I think that's the big message. And when I look at this, because we've all had times in our lives, or we could even be going through something like this right now, where things just don't make sense. But the hope is, in the end, it will all make sense. And I really think it has just been communicated so powerfully and so beautifully and so simply in the way he's done this. You know, he's transcended time and space in this one little tiny image. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
So after Joseph's in jail.
Yes. So if you remember, we had I should say the baker was killed, lost his life. Very sad. The butler was freed, just as Joseph had said. And here we have the Pharaoh, and it says, and there is, I wonder if that was embroidered on his sheets. What do you think?
It looks like it, doesn't it?
It does.
I love the way he placed it perfectly across his sheets.
I know. So it says Sogno di Faraone, and which is I guess means the dreaming Pharaoh. And this is the other thing that's kind of fun. If you kind of know the story that's going on and you see it you see words or names in another language, you can kind of try to figure it out. What is it? Especially if it's in Latin or if it's in French. This is in Italian or German, but you can kind of have a little bit of fun trying to figure out, what is this language? And so this is the dreaming Pharaoh, or the Pharaoh has his dreams. And you can see he has the wheat. And his dream was, and for people who don't know the dream, he dreamt that these full and healthy stalks of wheat were devoured by thin, dying wheat. And how do you depict that? Lots of different ways of doing it. I've seen it done, but that's a really hard thing. Eating wheat. A little easier
Cows
with
make
the
more
cow.
sense.
Yes, exactly. So you would have the fatted kine being devoured by the thin kine or cows. And so you can see both of those in his dreams above his head. And he seems quite distraught about the whole thing. And I think I would be too if I saw something like that. And so
again, it's another little thought bubble of an image, because it has its own little, you're supposed to feel like you're looking through a window, but it's a little framed image. And so it does feel like a little thought bubble kind of off to the side.
Exactly. And I think this group of three men here in front, I'm not sure who they are. I'm sure, they could have been a patron, could have been members of the family of the people who had this painting in their home, and they're supposed to be representing something else. We don't know. But anyway,
they're not representing the inept advisors to the Pharaoh, because I'd be kind of distraught as a patron if that's who I got portrayed
That's
as.
true. That's true. Yeah, you just never know. But you can see, I think, the man standing to the left, and he's holding some kind of staff. I actually think that might be the butler.
Seems like the butler.
Yeah.
Where he's standing at the side. And we'll see him in the next image.
Yeah.
Where he's standing next to the Pharaoh.
Exactly. And so here we have Joseph interpreting the Pharaoh's dream. He's at his breakfast table, and Joseph is he still looks quite young. And he is interpreting Pharaoh's dream. And, it's kind of straightforward here. It's a different look. It's a different kind of building that they're in Egypt. And it's about, I think, I'm looking at the buildings. If we go back, you don't need to go back. Mm-hmm. But if you remember the buildings where a lot of things were taking place in Joseph's life, they were all kind of that beautiful slate, gray, purpley color. And this one is quite different. And I just wonder if that's because this is more about Pharaoh and less about Joseph, and what Pharaoh does and the decisions that he makes in terms of the salvation of Joseph's family. And of course we have those lovely dogs down at the bottom.
Yeah. The beautiful greyhounds.
I know,
which just accentuate even more the importance of the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
The breed of dog has been running with royalty for years and years.
A long time. And and I love the way one is chewing on a little bone. Nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
As you know.
Yes, exactly. This just reminds me, at the Vatican Museum, there is a marble sculpture of some greyhounds, and I think they're Roman. And do you know what? They look like you can just go up and pet them. They're so beautifully executed. It's just amazing. And yeah, so I think these dogs are probably running around the household. I think there's so many of them in this. I just wonder if he's like, you know what, I'm just going to throw in, a couple of the patrons' dogs. Maybe I'll get a.
They could be the patrons' dogs in there. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So ready for next?
Yep. I'm ready for the next one.
After this wonderful interpretation.
Yes. So this one, Joseph is being drawn on his chariot, which is impressive, but not very aerodynamic. And I get the impression that whoever made this, surely they've seen chariots, but I don't know. It looks to me like a Mardi Gras float, personally.
My first impression was I thought it was a sarcophagus.
I know. And it's interesting that, and you pointed this out, this is the first time we see Joseph instead of Giuseppe. And so that's interesting. Just right in the round, the rondel, I think is what it's called. In the middle of the rondel is Joseph. But you had some interesting theories about this. Why don't you share that with us?
I mean, the whole sarcophagus imagery that I got, especially knowing that Joseph was buried in Egypt and not taken.
Yeah.
Kind of, okay, that's a little foreshadowing of that. I love to, and I only noticed it recently after looking at this for years, hours and hours, but you have the crier going before him, which everyone's supposed to be bowing down to Joseph, and he's crying out to everyone.
That's true, yeah.
But even the throne that Joseph is sitting on actually has the face of someone crying out.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
There's all these great little details in it. I mean, not to mention he's being pulled by white horses. And
yeah.
It's just,
with red crosses. Look, on the one.
Yeah.
It's like a red cross. So cool.
Mm-hmm. And then eventually we'll see how his staff that he has in his hand is pointing to the image that we already gave a little sneak peek of.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. The one where, the staff, if you look at the whole panel, yes, it is pointing directly to where he was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, imprisoned, and then sitting in power. So that's where that staff, yes, that draws your eye back up right to the middle of that. Good point.
So here, this is zooming in on what his staff is pointing at.
Yeah. And that's the center of that. That's the reunion. That's where it all starts making sense. That's where his life starts making sense.
And I think I put the verses next to all of our images here. And I think it was Genesis 45, the verses 14 and 15, where they actually give the great description of Joseph and Benjamin embracing.
Yeah.
And I loved that D'Antonio decided to really show that moment, because it's such a profound statement as you're reading through Joseph's story.
Yeah.
Just to hear the way that he just wrapped his arms around his brother and wept.
Yeah, exactly. And look at this. And the other contrast is, if you go to, again, don't go all the way back, but just recall the image where the brothers are showing the coat soaked in blood. Mm-hmm. They're not looking at their father. They're kind of no eye contact anywhere, and they're all spread out and disordered. And here they're all circled around Joseph. And in place of that bloody cloak, we have that sack of grain with a golden cup inside. And so it's almost like everything now is reunited. It's starting to make sense. And there's order. Order is coming in where chaos had reigned for such a long time in their lives. Yeah, because they had to live with that guilt their whole life. That lie that they told their father. They had to carry that around.
And that's a lie to hold on to for a long time. I mean, this just didn't happen, a week's time or something.
Exactly. Years, and how that affects them. And actually in Genesis, you do see how they do kind of fall into sin and they're doing all kinds of weird stuff. And it just goes with them, it follows them their whole lives.
And here they are fulfilling his dream, bowing down before him.
Exactly. Although he was probably gracious enough to not say, "I told you so."
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Next.
Right. So all this results in...
And this is when Pharaoh was so excited. He just invited his Joseph's entire family, just come and live in Goshen. And, you have to think Pharaoh must have been incredibly impressed with Joseph to do that. Mm-hmm. And here we have a foreshadowing of so many things. So right in the center of this image, with all of the people and the camels and the cows, and I'm sure there's a dog or two in there. I have a lovely, great dappled gray horse up on his hind legs. But right in the center, you have a woman sitting on a black horse, and she's holding a little baby on her lap. And I really think that is a foreshadowing of the Holy Family fleeing to Egypt. There's just it's so much that icon of the Blessed Mother with Christ on her lap. There's a repeated one in the back as well. So it's almost like, if in case you didn't get it then, get it now. Exactly. And to the left, there's this glorious woman who it's very Botticelli-esque, the draping of her tunic and her the way the wind is blowing the tunic and blowing through her hair. It really kind of recalls The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. I'm sure they were aware of one another, these artists. They had to be. And that actual posture that she has actually goes back to an old, I think it's a Roman fresco of the Three Graces, which is something that is repeated over and over by, it's copied over and over again by artists, but you see it here. So it looks like you can see what he's aware of. And if you're aware of it as well, if you look at the Three Graces, you can recall, Jacob's family moving into Egypt from this panel. And then you can, and you think about Botticelli, it's all really neat the way things start coming together.
This is also an important reason to keep these two pieces together.
Yes.
Because I don't know if anybody noticed, but I'm not on the second panel anymore. We've jumped back to the first panel.
That's right. So yeah.
This image, actually, you go from seeing Joseph reunited with his brothers in Egypt, and that sends you back to that moment when he was betrayed, when his brothers let him go. Again, like you said, it's pointing out that lie they held on to for a long time is now leading to the family being saved by moving to Egypt. They're being saved from the famine that's happening right now.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's just neat how the two pieces jump back and forth.
It is. Yeah. They work together. They're meant to be together. Part one and part two. So
the second half of the journey.
Yes. And so this is on the second panel. And again, we can see in the background, we've got a woman on a black horse, and she's got a baby on her lap, very much looking like the Blessed Mother and the flight into Egypt. And then I could even argue that maybe, Jacob being older, you could even say, that he's foreshadowing St. Joseph, leading the Holy Family into Egypt. But you have Jacob is on the horse, and you have Joseph running up to him and greeting him, embracing him. And, it's a lovely scene. Again, everything's starting to make sense. Everything is in the proper order. And you have in the foreground, you have a man in a red tunic, obviously one of Joseph's brothers, and he's holding the hand of a little boy. And in some ways, I'm getting a lot of Saint John the Baptist vibes in this image, because if you look down at the bottom of the little boy's tunic, it could be a little dog, but it looks an awful lot like a lamb as well. And he's jumping up at the end of his cloak, almost like hearkening to the Lamb of God. Mm. And so it's just fascinating. And then you've got another little greyhound, or big greyhound actually, kind of watching the whole thing. Everybody going by. Yeah. Yeah. He's kind of like us. He's just looking at the whole thing.
And again, I love how he illustrated that moment of embrace between Joseph and Jacob.
Yes. Again. Yeah.
Get that, that reunion, that, coming together. And Joseph's life is actually foreshadowing St. Joseph, foster father of Christ.
Yeah.
Where, him running away from Potiphar's wife is about maintaining his chastity.
Yeah.
And bringing the family to Egypt to save them.
And he was a dreamer. Both of them were dreamers.
Both dreamers.
Yeah. Yeah. And Joseph was also a Christ figure,
Yep.
The betrayal of his brothers and his sacrifice and everything. Yeah. So there's all kinds of stuff in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
These great crossovers.
Absolutely.
All right. Alix, your favorite.
This is so cool because, and it wasn't my favorite until we discussed it. Well, I kind of so just so our listeners and viewers know. So Kathryn and I were kind of discussing this. Oh my gosh, that conversation was so long, but it was fun. And we were going over the whole panel and kind of discussing the ideas and working this out. And then I said, I don't know who this guy is on this horse. So we have here, obviously a military man, and he is on the back of a war horse, and he's leaping over the walls of the city, going into Egypt. So everyone else is going through the gate in a very proper way. But here he is at the walls, jumping over the walls. And I was like, because he's so prominent, he's obviously means something. He's not somebody that you just go, oh yeah, look at that guy. We're supposed to
He's right in the middle.
Exactly. And that's why, and again, when you're looking at panels like these quote unquote storyboards or God's eye view panels of sacred art, especially when you've got something that's in your face like that, it's in your face for a reason. You're supposed to be understanding what's going on. And I just could not figure him out. And so, Kathryn, I'm going to let you tell everyone who this guy is, because Kathryn figured it out.
Okay, so first of all, I was having fun zooming in on him because he's in this beautiful armor. There's some significant, I'm like going, there's got to be some significance to this. He's on this gorgeous black horse. He's breaching the wall. He's out ahead of everyone. His helmet almost looks crown-like. And I'm just, okay, is he one of the brothers? I'm looking at the coloring, and so could be one of the brothers, but there's only Reuben who is really mentioned, by label. And
yeah.
So then I look a little closer at his armor, and there on his shoulder is this big lion head.
Yeah, an epaulette.
And yes, his epaulette. And I'm like, no way. So first thing I do, grab my Bible. I'm like reading through, going, okay, when did they head there? And I get to chapter 46, verse 28. And this is talking of Jacob. He sent Judah before him to Joseph. Like, okay, that's why. This has to be Judah. Also, Judah is always represented by a lion.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have Judah in all his glory heading to go get his brother to say, Dad's here.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that's so cool, to figure that out. And yeah, that's who it has to be. The Lion of Judah. Yeah. Very cool. Which again is a prefiguration of Christ. Yeah. The Lion of Judah. So, yeah, just so neat.
And then there's only one corner of both these panels that we have not looked at yet.
Yes.
Little pink houses. This is up above Pharaoh's dream.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is this here? Other than for me to just get lost in the story. I'm wondering, who are these people? What are they doing? That looks like it could be a temple gathering or maybe another grand home somewhere.
Oh, no, you know what it is? It's the stores for the wheat. They're like got wheat on their, sacks of wheat and grain, and they're like distributing it. That's what it is.
There it is. It's the big grain house.
Yes.
So see, looking at it again, we're discovering what this is. And here
Exactly.
it was above Pharaoh's dream. And I got so lost in it. Yeah.
That's so fun. Yeah, because sometimes you're looking at it and you're like, what does this mean? And you're completely missing it. And you come back and you go, oh, that's what it, yeah. Because to be honest, I did not, I just noticed that. That's so cool.
I can actually thank my mom. This is the one time her hours of wallpapering my bedroom when I was a little girl are paying off, because my bedroom wallpaper was this crazy greens and pinks scenes of people along roadways. It just repeated over and over again. And yes, I would spend many of an hours wondering where they were going and what they were doing.
There you go. Yeah.
So seeing these little pink houses made me go, what is going on here? This is so fascinating.
Exactly.
So great
Exactly.
for contemplating.
It is. And that's the other side of it. It's contemplating, just thinking about it and thinking about.
Sit in a room with all of it.
How amazing would that have been? Yeah. So here.
Have a full image of this for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Just take it in, and you can actually see the high res of the Getty Museum's image versus the not so high res of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But we can imagine how nice these would be together. And again, I think this is something that in studying this, I really started thinking about my own life as two panels. And what would it look like? And this is something, our listeners and viewers should think, because the reality is this is what our lives are. It's a work of art. We're part of a story. We keep saying this over and over again. We are part of a story, and it's a good story. And just in the same way that all of these events happened, which led to the salvation of Joseph's family, we need to be cognizant of that in our own lives. And even if we're in a very low place or a very high place, we're still in a story, and it's not our story. I think that's the biggest thing to remember. It's not our story, but it's a really wonderful one. And these two panels communicate that so beautifully. And I just hope that, people looking at this come away with that and really start imagining your own story. One of the things that I couldn't find in this, and I did look, is I couldn't find an image of the sun and the moon, which is so weird because
Right.
Joseph's dreams had to do with the sun and the moon as well. And I just thought, where is it? But you know what? In the same way that we missed things and we didn't get things, I wonder if there's somewhere in these panels. And I want to encourage,
They are.
don't give it away.
I think I know where they might be.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, let's just invite everyone to come. And if you know where it is, we've got it on Discord. You can share with us. If you found it, let us know. So we're not going to, I think I kind of know too, but I'm not sure.
Now.
Yeah.
No, people got to show us what they know. And
Exactly.
If you see something exciting, some small little detail let us know. This is one of those paintings that encourage contemplation.
It does. It does.
I mean, imagine Lectio Divina like this for all the whole Bible.
Exactly.
What a way to teach our children.
Exactly. Do you know what? And this is the thing. I love getting lost in art. And this is one of those things where you can get into the scene, you can step out of the scene, you can get back in another place and try to figure it out. And it's just amazing. It's really, really amazing. And so I think there you go. That's we're finished with the story of Joseph, a story torn asunder. And thankfully we have it put back together just this one time. So thanks for that, Kathryn. And I wanted to just add quickly, I meant to say this in the beginning, but I want to say it now. I wanted to dedicate this episode to a dear friend of mine, John McDougall, who died suddenly. And I just ask all of our listeners to please pray for his soul. And it's also dedicated to his family, his parents and his brother and his wife and children. And again, it was just the message that, do you know what? It's all going to make sense. And that's something that we all need to know. We all need to remember. And what a great way to contemplate our lives and making sense of everything. So thanks for letting me do that. I really appreciate it.
Yes, prayers for all there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we'd like to invite our listeners and viewers to please be sure to subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast app, or on the StarQuest YouTube channel at youtube.com, StarQuest Media. And you can watch the shows and see all these beautiful images. To find previous episodes of The Secrets of Sacred Art and to give us some feedback, please visit sqpn.com/sacred art. And you can email us at sacredart@sqpn.com. And please follow us on StarQuest on social media, facebook.com, and also our Discord community. Great conversations going on Discord community. So please join us there and let us know what you find in here.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathryn. And then we'll be back next time, and we're going to be discussing something really, really fascinating. And that is the catechism ladders. Did I get that right?
Yeah. That's Jesuit catechism.
Jesuit catechism ladders. Really fascinating subject. And if you like, on
another journey with pictures. Yay.
It does. But this time it's with the is it the Lakota tribe
used throughout the Northwest, almost anywhere where the Jesuits had set up missions in the American Northwest.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so we're going to be on the other side of the world and a little closer to our time in history. So do not miss it. It's really fascinating. I cannot wait. Cannot wait to hear about that one. So until then, I'm Alix Murray.
And I'm Kathryn Laffrey, hoping you find something beautiful.
Take care.